Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. Tom Friedman has been a columnist at the New York Times for 25 years. In that quarter century, Friedman has raised banality and cliche mongering to a kind of art form. Like Picasso, he wastes nothing. There is not a single piece of mindless conventional wisdom floating around Washington or New York City that Tom Friedman hasn't managed to whip into a hasty column at one time or another. Naturally, our ruling class loves him. They consider him brilliant. They read Tom Friedman on the Peloton every morning, and they feel affirmed. He's as dumb as they are. We refer you to Friedman's column this morning because there is no question it is a taste of things to come, and very soon. In that column, Friedman calls for Joe Biden to skip the fall presidential debates. For cover, Friedman adds a couple of silly caveats. Biden should only consider debating, he writes, if Donald Trump releases years of his personal tax returns and then agrees to have a panel of journalists sit on stage to call him a liar in real time. Otherwise, no debating. Turns out Tom Friedman is not really a genius, so it's pretty obvious what's going on here. This is the most cynical election strategy ever devised or ever perpetrated on American voters. Hide the candidate till Election Day. The country can find out what's in the administration after it's in power. But until then, no appearing in public, and my God, don't ever tell the truth. So will the Biden campaign take Tom Friedman's advice? Well, of course they will take it because they have no choice. Biden is up in the polls as of right now, so they can't let him talk. That could wreck everything. People might discover that Joe Biden bears no resemblance to the Joe Biden they remember.
It would put 720 million women back in the workforce. I love this place. Look, what's not to like about Vermont in terms of the beauty of it? And what a neat town.
Poor kids are just as bright and just as talented as white kids.
We choose science over fiction. We choose truth over facts.
Think about it. We hold these truths to be self-evident. All men and women created by you know the thing.
You know the thing. In fact, we do know the thing. But poor Joe Biden does not know the thing, and at times Biden doesn't seem to know anything or even to recognize his own wife. Imagine Biden spending 6 hours on stage with Donald Trump trading jabs on live television. No, he can't do that, so he's not going to do that. Instead, they're going to keep Joe Biden hidden behind a curtain. He'll read prepared speeches from time to time. On a good day, he can pull that off. But nothing extemporaneous or off the cuff. He's not capable of that. It's all pretty shocking if you think about it. We've kind of accepted it, but pull back a little bit. They're running a candidate for president who cannot govern, and they know that, and they're doing it anyway. So what does that say about the people around Joe Biden? Well, they're ruthless, obviously, and they're not into debate, not just presidential debates, but any debate. They don't like being disagreed with. They don't believe that there are two sides to any question. They believe their own views are the only legitimate views. When you criticize them, they won't engage with you. They don't bother to rebut your points. They simply attack you. Joe Biden himself attacked this show today, in fact. He didn't respond to the questions that we raised. He just called us names. And then his minions tried to pull us off the air. We survived because, thank God, we work here. But you should know that's how they plan to run the country. Biden will pick some running mate whose identity makes it impossible for anyone to criticize her. And then they'll describe any criticism of their governance as a hate crime. We got a taste of that for 8 years under Barack Obama. You know this. You know how it works. And of course, they've been doing it for years on college campuses and in corporate diversity seminars, any place where they have total control. Now the entire American population is getting the very same treatment. Tonight, for example, close to 1,000 companies are boycotting Facebook's advertising platform. Why are they doing that? Because they're demanding that Facebook censor the president and his voters. Ban conservative news outlets, allow only publications controlled by the left to decide what's news. Well, that's most anyway, because there's only one mass media company left in America that consistently dissents from the left's view of things. You're watching it right now. What do you think they plan to do to Fox News if they take power? You can imagine we're in their way. So these people aren't liberals. We call them that, but they're not. They don't wring their hands and wonder what to do next, like your flaky fifth grade teacher who wore sandals and worried about the fate of the baby harp seals or what a Save the Whale sticker on her Volvo. No, they're nothing like that. They're not sentimental. These are totalitarians. They know exactly what they want. They don't wring their hands. They want power, and they know how to get power. Why are so many people being fired right now for absurdly trivial offenses? Liking the wrong tweet, commenting on the wrong post, making the wrong hand gesture accidentally. Why is that happening? Simple. To terrify the rest of us into obedience. We better not say that. We could be hurt too. That's the lesson we take as we watch people around us fired and destroyed for doing very small things. That tells us that the people around Joe Biden, they're the ones doing this, rule by fear. They do not rule by consent, as you're supposed to in this country. They are, in fact, the true enemies of democracy. They don't care what you think. And just in case the rest of us miss the point, they're working hard to make self-defense against their mobs, their militia, a crime. You cannot resist us or we will prosecute you. St. Louis Circuit Attorney Kim Gardner is threatening to arrest Mark and Patricia McCloskey for daring to defend themselves against a mob that was threatening to murder them, a mob of Democratic voters. But they're the criminals. This is why the left wants to abolish the police. They're not abolishing law enforcement. They're replacing them with a woke militia of armed social workers, psychologists, and ethnic studies majors. Obedient Democratic voters. And it's why in places where the police still exist, they want to make certain you're too afraid to call them. In San Francisco, Supervisor Shaman Walton has introduced the Caution Against Racially Exploitative Non-Emergencies, or Karen Act. Hilarious if you think about it. A law we're told is against hate that is named after a racial slur. But it's not actually that funny. The bill would make it a hate crime for citizens to call law enforcement based on, quote, racial bias. How exactly do you think that law will be applied? You don't have to wonder. Call the police because you're frightened of mostly peaceful protesters threatening to kill you? You're the criminal now. And day by day, liberalism evaporates, and the left's troops who call themselves liberals, children of the Enlightenment, are falling in line behind what is clearly a power grab. Just today, the founder of Vox.com, Ezra Klein, someone regarded as an intellectual on the left, went on Twitter to explain why free speech is actually very bad. Quote, a lot of debates that sell themselves as being about free speech are actually about power. And there's a lot of power in being able to claim and hold the mantle of free speech defender. Oh, we see where you're going. Actually, Ezra Klein is half right about this. Free speech definitely is about power. Power for people who don't have any. People like Ezra Klein want less free speech for others so they can have more power. When they can tell you what you can say, what they're really telling you is what you're allowed to believe. They're not controlling your mouth, they're controlling your mind. And there's no deeper control than that. Any person who's telling you that is someone you should be very afraid of. Sagar Enjeti is the chief Washington correspondent for The Hill, and we're happy to have him on tonight. So Sagar, you came up in journalism. You exist in the journalistic sphere, such as it is, I guess, now. Are you surprised by how little debate remains? Legitimate exchanges, civil exchanges of different views?
No, Tucker, I'm not, because the ground for this has been laid for quite some time. As you pointed out, the culture wars. Everybody said what was going on in these American campuses was just ludicrous for the right to focus on. Well, many of those people grew up and they graduated, and now they work at Vox.com. Now they work at the New York Times. Now they work in the most storied and most important elite institutions in the country. Many of them work on the Biden campaign, as you rightfully pointed out. We should have absolutely no illusions that whenever these people come to power, especially with somebody like Joe Biden at the helm, who barely understands what is going on, his Department of Justice, his government, and any of the powers that are invested in the highest institutions will be used expressly to put out any dissent whatsoever. It is all a crescendo to that moment. It is all driven by the idea that we must not engage, we must deplatform, we must remove, we must expressly move away from anybody who holds a different view. Just remember that the New York Times fired its top editor for publishing an op-ed by Senator Tom Cotton, who was espousing a position which at the time it was published was supported by 58% of Americans, and that is using the United States military to restore order in American streets. If they can shut down majoritarian positions in those institutions, that's what they're going to do whenever they come to power in this country.
What's so striking is the ferocity of their passive aggression. So I express strong opinions on the show. People don't like them. They criticize me. It never hurts my feelings. That's totally fair. I criticize others. You can criticize me back. They consistently set themselves up so they're immune from criticism. You can't criticize me because I'm this person or I did that. I'm immune from critique. How do they get away with that?
It's kind of incredible, right? They'll be like, you're a disgusting, virulent, racist, anti-Semite. And I'll be like, well, hold on a second here. And they're like, he's harassing me. He's harassing me by responding to me. And I'm like, but you just called me a disgusting, virulent racist. And that's the worst possible thing that you can say about somebody in American society. Rightfully so. I think being a racist is a terrible thing. Are you a racist because you want to have less immigration to the United States and less competition for American wages? But they control speech. They control the rules of the debate. And when they can do that, they can make it so that even the act of defense is an act of so-called offense against them. It's just complete madness.
Well, and I hate to blame the victims in all this because the victims are people I know and love. It's normal people. But we are kind of participating in our own oppression a little bit, aren't we? I mean, if they say, no, you can't say that, why don't we just hoist the middle finger and laugh? Why are we playing along with this? Most people aren't racist. Most Americans are very decent, good-hearted people, obviously. So why are we allowing them to control us?
It's a great question, Tucker, and it's one that was probably directed to the Republican leadership because unlike the Democratic leadership, they have no idea how to actually use power and actually to defend and protect their constituents and the people that brought them to power. They think that by appeasing the Democrats or the left or in any of these cases that they're like, oh, well, they'll just love us if we give them this particular thing. But it's the light version of woke that is never enough for them. That is at the very core ethos of this ideology.
Yeah, it doesn't work in prison and it doesn't work in politics. You give in a little. I'm serious. Don't ever give in. Right. Sagar and Jetty, great to see you tonight. Thank you for your wisdom.
Thank you, Tucker.